For the video version of this podcast, please visit our YouTube channel, Daughters of the American Revolution, National Headquarters. Otherwise, please enjoy this audio podcast on your favorite podcast streaming service.
Some of those stories were hard to tell, but these women were more than willing to tell their stories and were so inspiring to other women, to hear, okay, I am not the only one that has gone through this. And I think what this does is it reminds us, though we have these tenets within our organization and these platforms in which we stand, that we are still a women's-led organization. We always have been. So it really helps us get at the core of who we are as human beings.
Hello and welcome to the DAR Today podcast. I'm your host, Brooke Bullmaster Stewart, the chair of the DAR Today podcast committee. Well, I was listening to the radio the other day, and it sounded actually a little something like this.
I am woman, hear me roar.
Hear me.
Man, I feel like a woman.
Isn't it free stuff?
Well, you may have guessed, this month's podcast is all about women. Not that we're going to be singing all about that, although wouldn't that be fun to have a little karaoke sing-along sometime, huh? But we want to highlight our Women's Issues Committee within our DAR organization. But before we jump into that topic, we'd love to give a shout out to our beloved state of Arkansas, with a special thanks to State Regent Gail Parsons-Markley and State Historian Angie Dennis for making us aware of what is happening there. And also be sure to stay tuned to the end. We have a fantastic story about something that happened in our American history that not a lot of people are aware of. So sit back, relax, or watch on YouTube. Be sure to hit like and subscribe, as it really does make a difference. We're just so happy to have you here with us today. 130 years of service to God, home, and country. That is what Arkansas Daughters are celebrating in 2023, and what a milestone it is. You may or may not know that on October 11th of this year, our beloved organization celebrated 133 years. Well, just 3 years after this formation of the National Society, Daughters of the American Revolution, wife of Clifton Breckinridge, a Confederate Civil War Navy veteran and U.S. House of Representatives Congressman, Catherine Carson Breckinridge posted a small announcement on June 14, 1893, in the Daily Arkansas Gazette with a call and appeal to the patriotism of the ladies of Little Rock to join her in organizing a local chapter of the Daughters of the American Revolution. Breckinridge, with a national number of 146, was a charter member of the NSDAR, having founder Eugenia Washington sign her application in February of 1891. And that first call to action in the Daily Arkansas Gazette drew so much attention, the meeting had to be moved from a private home to a local hotel. Mrs. Breckinridge presented the Little Rock chapter, the first chapter organized in Arkansas, with a gavel of cherry wood grown from a tree on George Washington's Mount Vernon estate. This amazing historical artifact is, not surprisingly, still cherished by Arkansas Daughters today. A celebration exhibit marking the illustrious history of the Arkansas Division opened in the state's capital August 21st of this year and runs through November 10th of this year. Items for display were contributed by Arkansas's 40 chapters and share the history of the Arkansas DAR, along with pillars of preservation, education, patriotism, and service as a testimony to today's DAR. A featured item is a photograph of the gown worn by Mrs. Breckinridge on the occasion of the coronation of Tsar Nicholas of Russia, and during which time Mr. Breckinridge served as the U.S. Minister of Russia during the Cleveland presidential administration. The original gown can be viewed at Arkansas's Old State House Museum, which also houses their DAR period room. Congratulations to the Daughters of Arkansas. Truly, their celebration is one in which we all can share.
What a great pleasure we have today to speak with Cynthia Pritchard, who's the National Chair for Women's Issues Committee. Now, Cynthia, yours is a really sort of different committee. Tell us about how that started.
So the committee started several administrations ago to bring forward sort of topics that were really elevated among the women that are our members. And it had three tenets when it first started. It was family, which of course is, we're in a genealogy organization. Of course we have family. And then health, obviously the critical issues around health. And then career, what are people doing in their careers, and sort of that exploration into the career space. So it was begun under those tenets. And sort of the first really thing that took off with it was the essay contest.
Oh, tell us about the essay contest.
Well, the essay contest is really an opportunity for members to tell their stories and to share their stories. And I think it gives us a little insight into one another, which I think is really great, because ultimately we are human beings that live human lives. And so we have things that impact us. So the essay contest really focuses on those areas, but we have expanded it. So it's family, it's career, it's physical health and mental health. And the overarching theme is celebrating and caring for women. So it's telling your story maybe where you were celebrated, or celebrating another member that influenced you, whether it be in your career, or whether it be in your family, or whether it be in DAR. And then obviously caring, where have you gone through some trials and tribulations? And you want to share that story so people don't feel they're on an island when they're going through something. And that really elevated itself in this round because we added mental health. And some of those stories were hard to tell, but these women were more than willing to tell their stories, and were so inspiring to other women, to hear, okay, I am not the only one that has gone through this. I'm not the only survivor of cancer in the organization. I'm not the only one that's gone through a divorce. I'm not the only one that suffers from depression. And I think what this does is it reminds us, though we have these tenets within our organization and these platforms in which we stand, that we are still a women's-led organization. We always have been. So it really helps us get at the core of who we are as human beings.
I know we have a bit of the featured essay that has to do with mental health. And so we'd like to play a bit of that now.
Here are two short excerpts from National Mental Health Essay winner Nancy May of Virginia. Her essay is entitled, Out of the Depths of Loneliness. Thank you, Nancy, for sharing this with us.
The depression would not go away. I never experienced loneliness like this before, one where I felt deserted, crying out and hearing no reply. This isolation and deprivation traveled down to my soul. I knew I had to get help, not only for myself, but for my son. I got help through online therapy and discovered what I was experiencing was pathological loneliness. I learned, as Dr. Murty said, that the cure to loneliness is love. Love is not people-pleasing, nor is it selfish. To love meant that I needed to show mercy to myself and others, while at the same time instilling the discipline needed to grow, learn new skills, and set boundaries. I knew if I wanted to combat my loneliness, I needed to quit being alone. I had to get out and open my heart. That is when I decided to become more active in my Daughters of the American Revolution chapter. The DAR encourages volunteering and connection with my local community. It was a godsend for me.
There are so many components to the Women's Issues Committee. It's quite extraordinary. And I'd love it if you would tell us a little bit about each one of those right now.
Absolutely. As I talked about the essay contest, but those topics are not just essay topics. They're also part of the committee and how we formulate our message. We've expanded the committee and added some other things in this administration, which we are very excited about. We added senior advocacy. As we have an aging population and as our members age, we have a responsibility to make sure that we care for our older members, we keep them engaged and understand their circumstances are different. They may not be able to come to a meeting. They may not be able to pay their dues, things that can happen. And we really need to make sure that they who joined at a certain point in their life get the advantage of being a lifetime member up until their death. So we have a whole strategy called Sparkle a Spangle. We are calling our senior members our Spangles. And how do we bring sparkle into their life as a member of DAR? That is really critically important. We've also added financial literacy, another area which we've added. Each one of the things that impacts us in life, good or bad, has financial implications. So we really need to understand those implications and that how finances play a part in that. So whether it's financial education, whether it's how we support each other financially during the ups and downs and what we can do with that. So those are the two new ones. Playing off the other topics, just to give a little sense, is family. Really talking about family, not just the construct of what we consider a traditional family, but what is family? Family could be a neighborhood. You have your DAR family. I have members that have been friends of mine for 35 years. They're like my family. We are there for weddings. We are there for christenings. We are also there for funerals. So that DAR family. Then we talk about health. And again, we talked about mental health. 1 in 3 individuals struggle with mental health in some way, shape, or form. So how are we helping our members and acknowledging that there might be times when things aren't going well? And how do we check in with them instead of say, why aren't they here? Maybe there's a reason they're not here, making sure they're okay. Physical health, all the things that impact women, whether it be cancer, whether it be heart disease, which are the 2 leading things that cause death among women, making sure that people are aware. Are they getting tested? Are they doing that? And also a forum where they can tell their story and elevate others. And then career. Career is an interesting place. And we've really taken advantage of the DOC, or the Daughters Online community, as a way to really elevate career. So we created this sort of professional mentorship concept that we are encouraging members to put their professional resumes and information in the DOC. It accepts that information so that we can look at who's the talent among us, but also for our younger members to say, wait a minute, she did this. She could maybe help me. She could maybe be my mentor. Nothing gets me more excited than when a member reaches out and says, hey, I see you have done this. Could you connect me to your resources? Absolutely. I think this committee gets to the heart of that. Women are this incredible group of people, and we've got, the oldest women's organization in the country. And we have this great opportunity to keep that legacy alive by connecting with each other better on a human level.
So do you find that what you're doing then is providing information for members? That's what you're doing, guidance and information?
We're providing tips, tools, guidance, information, but I hope we're also providing a kinship. That is really important to me. We can bring together some great content, and we have an incredible team that does that because they have professional experience in the areas. We can share ideas. We can create accolades among those who tell their story and celebrate them. We create tools on how to care for our chapter members. But on the flip side of that, we have to do it with a human heart, and that information has to be received, and hopefully it inspires our members. We as the committee chose to make our theme celebrating and caring for women. We have to say thank you. We have to celebrate. And that's why getting people to tell their stories. We have to care. We have to think. And if we are going to succeed in our mission to accomplish all the things that we're asking our members to accomplish, we have to remember at the end of the day, they have lives outside of DAR. And if we can support one another through that our organization will be stronger.
I really appreciate too that you have the mental issues aspect of the committee. And I recently got to sit down with Lory Fraracchio-Kenney and have a quick interview. I would love to play that now for us.
Well, Lory Fraracchio-Kenney, thank you so much for being here with us today. Really appreciate you taking the time. Why don't you tell us about your position within Women's Issues Committee?
Absolutely, Brooke. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate this. It's a great opportunity to talk about women's issues. And specifically, I'm the National Vice Chair, Women's Issues Mental Health. It is a new committee actually a new part of the committee. We focus on truly removing the stigma of mental health and helping our daughters know that it's okay to talk about some of the things that you're struggling with. And that's how this actually evolved.
Tell us about that.
Sure, I'd love to. So our national chair, Cynthia Pritchard, when she was first asked to take on this role, her and I had done some work together prior with a nonprofit organization in the Pennsylvania area. And the sole focus of that organization was to help remove the stigma of mental health. So her and I had been exposed to this topic. Mental health, it's been a topic for decades. In the month of May, we really bring in awareness to the mental health issues since the 1950s. Mrs. Wright was very excited about having the opportunity to just share this with our members, have conversations, have dialogues, write essays, and really let people know that they're not alone and that sharing is caring. And we want to be there for those individuals that may be struggling or have a family member, just to open the dialogue and remove the stigma.
That's wonderful. What would you recommend to chapters to do with their members in a way to start that dialogue, like you said, within the chapters?
That's a really good question, Brooke. Thank you for asking about that. So at the chapter level, we have several organizations throughout the world that help and talk about mental health. They could have a program where they have a local speaker come in. They could also begin reaching out to some of their members. Maybe they haven't heard from in a while. It has been a very trying time with COVID, with the lockdowns, and some of individuals are having a difficult time coming out of that, or they may have family members that are still struggling. So we would really encourage our members to have conversations about it, talk to your members, reach out to them. We also have a wonderful essay contest that we support at the chapter, state, and national level. And we really encourage our members to share their stories, talk about it. I read some incredible essays this past spring where women really embraced the concept of, I'm going to share what's happened to me. I'm also going to share how I overcame it. Because that's the goal, is to really help individuals know they're not alone, that there's resources, and there are things that they can do to really support mental health and really help those around them.
What a blessing that is to our members to be able to have that resource. Writing down your feelings, creating this essay. I know we're going to be playing one of those essays, a bit of it anyway, on this podcast. And I just love that you're giving this opportunity to members to be able to talk about this, to give them that, like you said, that safe space to be able to go, I'm really struggling. This is what I need to talk about. Mm-hmm. So that'll be an incredible blessing for our organization. And I love that Mrs. Wright, really saw that opportunity.
Brooke, thank you for sharing the compassion. Yes, it is a very difficult subject at times when we let people know it's okay to talk about it. It's okay to be frustrated, to be depressed, to have anxiety. It's okay. There are people here you can talk to, and that's our goal. You can talk about it. We'll talk you through it. I've had some wonderful and compassionate and amazing conversations with some of our daughters around this topic. People just want to know that people care.
Exactly.
It is a stigma that it shouldn't be addressed, but I believe we're helping society, we're helping our members, we're helping our chapters really overcome that stigma and help them understand it's okay. It's okay. We're all in this together.
Exactly. Lory, I think you're a perfect person to be in this position as National Vice Chair. And I love that you just were willing to take the time to talk with us today. Thank you so much.
You're so welcome, Brooke. Thank you.
And of course, along with that mental component, we have the physical component. And it was really neat. We got to talk with another one of your national vice chairs, Michelle McElroy, who is national vice chair for physical issues. And I'd love to play that interview now with her. Thank you for having me today. I am the national vice chair of physical health for women's issues. And I have been part of DAR now for 8 years.
Tell us what role that you play within the Women's Issues Committee. What is it that you do?
My focus is on physical health. And with that, one of my roles is to write the topics that can be shared during your monthly meetings that are on the Women's Issues Minutes. And they provide a series of timely topics that you can share within the year. I also share different topics that you can promote that will maybe inspire you on finding a local speaker that will be able to give you a great program and share that knowledge. I also try to generate project ideas that help your chapter members specifically about their health. For instance, maybe bringing in a nurse that could check blood pressures and have a screening day at your local meeting.
Do you have any examples of what chapters have done to promote health within their chapters?
Yes, one chapter shared that they invited a breast surgeon to come to their meeting, and she talked about the importance of getting your breast cancer screening, what that involves. She also provided shower cards so women would have that monthly reminder to do their checks and to see the technique involved. But she also brought in models where women could also palpate a normal breast to be able to practice on something physical. And then she brought in models that also had a breast mass that you had to palpate and find the mass. So you would know then what you're really trying to feel for, to be able to feel confident that you would be able to feel what you're supposed to be feeling. And then she also walked through what the process is of getting a mammogram and what would happen if they found an abnormal area in your mammogram, and how that works, and how they try to help you through that moment that could be very scary while you're trying to navigate. Is there a breast cancer going to be diagnosed, or is there something else going on?
That would be an amazing thing for a chapter, I think, to have some sort of a resource like that at a meeting. Mm-hmm. What a blessing that must have been. Do you have any other recommendations that chapters could possibly think about doing at a chapter meeting?
Sure. Other things they could think about is trying to do a project or a service project of some kind. So one of those could be collecting feminine hygiene projects. There's been a chapter that collects those and brings those to a Native American reservation schools. You could take those to a homeless shelter, a women's shelter, those types of places. You might also be able to have a project coming together to create comfort kits for chemo patients, to help support them during those moments. You might even make care packages for your homebound members and come together to bring those and then be able to deliver those. Another one that's kind of a fun event to come together is find a local 5K or fun walk and walk together. It promotes a good exercise activity as a group, but also raises money for a charity that you might feel strongly about. For a variety of health issues, JDR for juvenile diabetes, the Heart Association, maybe a local children's hospital.
It's so neat to talk with you, because this is why I think we really wanted to separate out the different parts of this committee, because each one is so important. And just your section, just the one that you're the national vice chair of, is a huge part of, us as women. It's our health, it's our well-being, it's all the different components of we as women and supporting each other in that way. And I love that you're in this position. And thank you so much for being here with us today, Michelle.
Thank you, Brooke, for having me.
And the other area of the Women's Issues Committee, which was brought to this committee several years ago by a donor. The Vivian's Outreach, a donor had given us money around creating a grant program or an award program for women struggling with homelessness. And when the idea was brought forward, it was put under the Women's Issues Committee. And when it was framed for the first distribution and moving forward, it was framed about veterans, women, female veterans that struggle with housing insecurity, and supporting those organizations that provide that housing. It's been such an incredible opportunity to learn about these organizations all over the country that are making sure that our women veterans have access to the resources they need. It's really interesting, and there's some really interesting data around it. A lot of our female veterans are homeless for a variety of reasons. Transition is hard. Divorce will happen incredibly. A lot of them are very well educated and very well trained, but it's sometimes hard, whether it sort of aligns with mental health or physical health, which we were just talking about. They could be struggling with PTSD. They could be disabled, physically disabled because of what happened to them while serving in a war zone. So these opportunities allow chapters to partner with local women's veterans homeless shelters and provide money for them to do the programmatic elements that they do. And these are pretty generous. They run anywhere from $20,000 to $40,000 a piece. We give around $100,000 away annually. And was really, to watch what they do, whether it be an educational program, a transition program, making sure they have the proper care for their children. A lot of these are single moms with children. And it has been such a joy for this committee to be able to give that money away and partner on a population that is so vitally important to our organization, which is our veterans. And for it to dovetail how we work with our veterans and our women's issues around making sure that the issues that impact our veterans that are very women-centric about being single moms or things like that can be addressed through this award program.
It's a very all-encompassing committee, isn't it?
It is, but it is inspiring every day to hear people's stories. Even the members of my committee are talking about, hey, we're talking about this in our state, or we're doing this in our state. I just am in awe of how people have embraced and engaged in this committee. You go to Congress, you go to your state conferences, you go to your fall meetings, and you walk into any room and you know that there is talent everywhere. But there are also life issues that are happening to every single one of those women. And if we can be a support network, we can be a kinship, we can provide that opportunity for them to feel that this is a home, that DAR is important to them, not just for the work, but for the people. I think this committee is trying to do it every day and say thank you. I'm always about saying thank you. People work very hard, and all of us are volunteers. And thank you is the nicest thing anyone can ever do.
Well, Cynthia, I would encourage people to go on the members' website and look at your extensive committee web pages. I would also encourage them to go on the Daughters Online community, the doc, and see what you've got going on there, the discussions that are going on there. And Cynthia Pritchard, thank you for being here today, for taking the time to speak with us about this really, really important committee in DAR.
And Brooke, thank you for sharing the message of everything we do in DAR.
Absolutely.
So you may remember the National Chair of Women's Issues, Cynthia Pritchard, touched upon something that we'd love to go into a little bit further in depth, and that's with regard to the spangles that are interspersed in all of our chapters. A spangle is a senior chapter member who's homebound and cannot attend chapter meetings. Our spangles have so much to offer. Let's keep them engaged in the chapter. One of the Wright administration's goals is to promote belonging through our membership by acknowledging with gratitude and friendship each member and her dedicated service to God, home, and country. Appreciate these Spangle chapter members through our DAR ties of service and friendship. Through senior advocacy of the Women's Issues Committee, we encourage your chapter chair or a committee member to coordinate the partnering of individual chapter members to a senior spangle by committing to Sparkle and keep them connected to the chapter and its members through monthly interaction. Some suggested ideas would be to mail holiday cards, birthday cards, or thinking of you cards. If possible, have these cards signed by all chapter members at a meeting and include little personal notes. For those who don't receive email, mail a printed copy in large print of the chapter minutes so that they're up to date on the chapter happenings. And in this age of electronic communication, we've almost forgotten how important it is to hear the voice of a friend. Make that phone call. And driving can be an issue for older members. Offer to pick them up and take them to meetings or special chapter events. Call ahead and arrange a home visit to check on absent members and inform them of DAR news. Share the Daughters newsletter and American Spirit magazine. Purchase or renew their subscription. These publications will keep them up to date on the latest news at the national, state, and chapter levels. Spotlight their DAR story. With their permission, utilize the chapter Facebook page or chapter newsletter to share their DAR story. Include pictures. Photo shoots require personal interaction, and that's an added benefit. And finally, with regard to their dues, not all seniors use computers, as we know. Mail a printed copy dues notice to those who don't use electronic communication. Include a stamped, self-addressed envelope for their dues payment. Make it easy for them. Consider a bylaw change to waive chapter dues for those members 90 years of age or older. And be sensitive to resignations or drops for non-payment of dues of senior members. Many are on a fixed income. You may find a chapter member who would like to honor their chapter senior and her contributions by assisting with her dues. You can also make senior members aware of the benefits of life membership, which provides a permanent association with NSDAR and actually saves on dues after reaching the age of 65. These are only a few suggestions. There are so many ways to recognize and honor our senior members, and we challenge each of you to sparkle through friendship and reach out to these daughters and encourage and recognize with appreciation their legacy to our society. Did you know that October 15th is considered the Day of the Rural Woman? Well, in honor of that fact, we bring you the following story. Perhaps you haven't heard about it in the past, and you might find it as interesting as I did. During World War I, thousands of young women took to the fields to put food on America's tables. Their story is one of initiative and determination, a truly American story. The United Nations International Day of Rural Women, observed on October 15th each year, serves as a reminder of the vital role that women play in food production, farming, and rural development globally. When you think about a farmer, you probably visualize a man. But did you know that 36% of U.S. farmers are women, and 56% of all farms have at least one female decision maker? Women have long been involved in farming, often working alongside their male counterparts, but their contributions have sometimes been overlooked or underestimated. The efforts of all farmers are crucial for ensuring food security, sustainable agriculture, and the economic development of these rural communities. In the April of 1918 Daughters of the American Revolution magazine, there is an article with the title, "Women to Train as Practical Farmers." These women would train to become part of what was called the Women's Land Army of America. This quote-unquote army was a volunteer organization that would address the labor shortages in agriculture due to the mobilization of men for military service during World War I. These hard-working ladies would fondly be referred to as farmerettes and were an icon of World War I, much like the Rosie the Riveters of World War II. These women symbolize strength, resilience, and determination of women in workforce during wartime. So where did these women train? And what role did the DAR play? Well, the opening paragraph of that 1918 article says it all, and I quote, "American women will lay down knitting needles and bandage rollers and take up the shovel and the hoe as practical farmers of the 3rd Encampment of the National Service School to be held in Washington, D.C. from April 22nd until June 1st, 1918, end quote. Each state regent was to appoint a student to the specially formed Company of the States, it was called. The tuition, uniform, and railroad expenses were paid by money pledged by DAR members. The National Service School was devoted to military preparedness for women. The Army, Navy, and Marine Corps all cooperated with the instruction, and this 3rd encampment included the Department of Agriculture, who directed intensive farming courses. The DAR-sponsored students would also learn food conservation, which included the making of Liberty Bread. Liberty Bread was considered quick bread, so no yeast, and it called for bran, cornmeal, or even potatoes as a substitute for wheat. The first and second school encampments in 1916 and 1917 were to prepare the students for national preparedness and for Red Cross and relief work. As the war requirements changed, so did the school curriculum. The school's goals emphasized training young women to become immediate assets in the war effort. The farmerettes were urgently needed to increase food production, and that's why the 1918 encampment was all about food, and also about getting the farmerettes out into the fields as quickly as possible. Unlike many organizations contributing to the war effort, the Women's Land Army of America consisted of all-female leadership and all-female staff. I think we daughters can appreciate an all-female run organization. And according to Kate Sklekas of the National Society Descendants of American Farmers, her research found that these so-called farmerettes came up with that name themselves. I think it's kind of cute. Well, these young women had beaux, brothers, fathers, and cousins in the military, and they were looking for ways to fill that void. Kate and other farmerette researchers affiliated with this National Society Descendants of American Farmers have located over 2,400 names of farmerettes. Initially, the Women's Land Army received no federal funding or even state support. In fact, many Americans apparently viewed female volunteerism in general with a wary eye, describing it as akin to, and I quote, a frivolous search for entertainment that needed to be controlled rigorously lest it detract from the serious business of war, end quote. However, the ladies proved particularly adept at fundraising, no surprise there, and some had already gained leadership experience with various civic and academic organizations. They gained the support of women's associations like ours, the DAR, and also from local businesses. They organized bake sales, concerts, and movie nights. By the summer of 1918, the farmerettes were on the job, or should I say in the fields, in 33 states. The Women's Land Army employed roughly 15,000 to 20,000 women between its beginnings in late 1917 until it was disbanded in 1919. Berry College, known well to DAR members, spoke of its farmerettes celebrating the desire of female students to contribute to the war efforts. Authors in this article in the Southern Highlander magazine remarked on the willingness of the college male students to soldier and that of female students to volunteer to drive tractors and keep the farm going in their absence. These women played a vital role in keeping food on America's tables and helped supply the military with much-needed provisions. Most of the women who joined the Land Army had no prior experience in farming, but they quickly learned to plow fields, operate tractors, plant, and harvest crops. And unlike other roles that women filled to help the war effort, the farmerettes were actually paid. In California, fruit growers had lucrative contracts with the military to supply troops with dried and canned fruit. However, they also had a huge problem, an extreme labor shortage. The California farmerettes were able to demand equal pay to their male counterparts. They also demanded an 8-hour workday and negotiated overtime. They were even given workers' compensation insurance, which was considered quite radical for the time. And speaking of radical, the farmerettes in this Women's Land Army also wore pants and coveralls, a huge divergence from women's traditional dress. Well, after the end of World War I, the Women's Land Army of America was disbanded as the soldiers returned home and once again took up the plow. Want to learn more about the Women's Land Army? Elaine F. Weiss's book called Fruits of Victory, The Women's Land Army of America in the Great War discusses more background history about the leaders, the origins of farming education, and the deployment of trained farmerettes. Throughout history, women have continuously rolled up their sleeves and played crucial roles during times of conflict and crisis. Daughters did what was required to serve home and country, and the Women's Land Army provided a generation of women with agency and inspiration. I'm sitting up a little bit straighter, knowing I am part of this organization which has such a proud history and such a sparkling future. We leave you today with this quote by Harriet Tubman. For Sarah Bradford's 1886 biography, Tubman told the writer, "I had reasoned this out in my mind that there was one of two things I had a right to, liberty or death. If I could not have one, I would have the other." Well, thanks for listening and be well, dear friends. Let's celebrate the stars and stripes forever and remember, with all of your ancestors behind you, you are the result of the love of thousands. Well, this podcast was written and produced by our incredible team of writers and editors. And we are, as always, so grateful for President General Pamela Edwards Rouse Wright and Historian General Suzanne Heskey for their constant guidance. To Cynthia Pritchard, Michelle McElroy, and Lory Fraracchio-Kenney of the Women's Issues Committee. To Alabama State Regent Gail Markley and State Historian Angie Dennis. To Kate Skleekus, National Society Descendants of American Farmers, for the incredible help with the feature on our Farmerettes. Thank you all so much for being so generous with your time. The National Society Daughters of the American Revolution is a non-profit, non-political, volunteer women's service organization dedicated to promoting patriotism, preserving American history, and securing America's future through better education for children. Members are all lineal descendants of those who supported the cause of independence in the Revolutionary War. For more information, please visit dar.org. This is the DAR Today podcast.